So what we're going to do in this tutorial is take a look at creating some really quick renders using Finalgather. So the first thing we need is a scene. Let's start our scene by creating some simple objects. I'm going to go up to Create at the top, Polygon Primitive, Plane, to make my ground plane. And I'm going to drag out my ground plane. If you don't have the ability to drag out a ground plane and Maya creates one for you, make sure to turn on interactive creation. You do that by going up to the top at Create, Polygon Primitive, and checking on interactive creation. Let's add a cube to the center of our scene. So let's go up to Create, Polygon Primitives, Cube. I'm going to drag out a cube in the center of my screen. In order to see our cube in shaded mode, I'm going to go ahead and hit 7. If you do not see your cube in shaded mode, you might have to hit 6 so that you turn on textured mode, and then hit 7 and it'll be completely dark. Let's start by adding a very simple light to our scene to illuminate our cube. You can do that by going up to Create, Lights, and let's select Point Light. You won't see the point light right away because it's hidden by our cube. So let's go ahead and hit 4, and you'll notice our point light in the center here. Let's hit W or click on Move here to move our point light. I'm going to move my point light above my cube. Let's go ahead and hit 6 to enter shaded mode. Now, point lights are used as lights that emit from every single direction. You can think of a point light sort of like a light bulb in a home. If we hit 7 to enter shaded mode, you'll see that it's no longer completely black and the top of our cube is illuminated. Let's go ahead and render this and see how it looks. We're going to go up to the top and click on our Render the Current Frame button. You'll see we get a nice render of our current scene utilizing Maya software. Let's go ahead and switch it to Mental Ray. Notice how Mental Ray is not in my tab. We have to turn this on through our Properties settings. So let's go up to Window, Settings and Preferences, and go down to our Plugin Manager. With our Plugin Manager window open, we want to scroll down to the Maya to MR section, which is in its own properties area. Turn on Loaded and Auto Loaded so that it always loads up whenever we enter Maya, and then hit Close. Now we should have a Mental Ray option in our tabs located in Render View. Let's go ahead and hit Render again. What you'll notice is there isn't much of a difference between Maya software and Mental Ray, and the reason is because we haven't used any indirect illumination options such as Global Illumination or Finalgather. So let's go ahead and save off a copy of this image so that we can look at the difference between Finalgather and just standard Mental Ray rendering. We do that by clicking the Keep Frame button. You'll notice at the bottom we now have a slider where we can cycle between two images. Currently both images display the same thing. Let's go up to our render settings here. Go to our indirect lighting section and turn on Finalgather. Let's go ahead and click our Render Frame button again. Right off the bat, you're going to look at the same scene and you might think that there is actually no difference between the two frames. So if we flip between them, it just became slightly simpler than before, or lighter. So if we've turned on Finalgather and it hasn't made much of a difference, what are we really using here? Well, Finalgather is actually a lighting algorithm that's controlled by shooting light rays from the camera itself. So what we have to do is actually select our camera and tell it what color and what intensity of light we'd like to shoot from our camera. So what we can do is go up to View, select Camera, and when you do that, the Camera Attribute Editor opens up. I'm going to go ahead and compress the different sliders and decompress environment. This background color is the actual color that we would control to illuminate light rays into our scene. So let's go ahead and light our scene so that it looks like it's early evening. So I'm just going to select a light blue color here, move slightly to the right using my value, which is my intensity, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a bluish tint. Let's go ahead and hit render now. What you'll notice is my camera is now shooting blue light rays into my scene, and if I flip between this, you can notice a significant difference. Now if I'd like to control the intensity of those light rays in my scene, what I can do is go back up to my render settings, and under Finalgather here, we have our primary diffuse scale. This controls the intensity of those light rays. Go ahead and click on the white box here. The numerical value of those light rays is displayed here. Right now it's set to 100%. Let's go ahead, for the purpose of instruction, let's go ahead and take this up to 10 and hit enter. I'm going to go ahead and save off a copy of this image, and I'm going to hit render. What you'll notice is we have a pretty blown out scene. We're shooting very intense light rays from our camera. Alright, let's do this one more time. And let's take this down to maybe a 1. Or let's try a 3. And let's render that again. You'll notice that it gives us, even though it's a little intense, it gives us a lot more of a pleasing effect than before, than our two previous images. Now, what light sort of, the strongest property of light is its ability to capture color and transmit that color on other surfaces. This is what truly Finalgather is, and it's also called global illumination. So currently our scene is made up of mostly gray objects. Let's go ahead and create a sphere. So I'm going to go up to create polygon primitive sphere, and I'm just going to place it close to my cube. I'm also going to apply a new material to my sphere. So let's shrink these down, and I'm going to right click on my sphere and go down to assign new material. That's going to bring up my new material option. I'm just going to select Lambert, and I'm going to name it sphere. MTL for material, and I'm just going to give the color a bright red. So let's go ahead and hit render again. What you'll notice is by default the light is hitting my sphere, and it's taking some of that color and it's bouncing it off onto the surface of my cube. And if we want to control the overall intensity and the number of surfaces that the lights bounce off of, we can do that again in the render settings, Finalgather section. So for now we have currently 0, which really equates to whatever surface is near it bounces. Say we would like it to bounce off of this surface and hit one more surface. We can take this up to number 1. I would like to really sort of intensify that, so I'm going to take it up to 2 and hit enter. Now I'm going to keep this image and I'm going to render it, and let's take a look at what the difference is. What you'll notice is the bounces are just slightly more intensive. Now if we want to control the overall intensity of the light hitting the surface, just like we did with primary diffuse scale, I'm going to go into secondary diffuse scale. I'm going to increase that value. So let's do 5 so that we can really see the effect. I'm going to keep this image and I'm going to render again. And what you'll notice is the blue from the ground is bouncing up, taking this side of the cube and making it a little bit bluer. And again, we're getting more light rays hitting the red surface of our ball and bouncing across that. You can see that the overall effect is a lot more intense. It's even gone as far as to hit the side of my sphere here and bounce onto the ground. So that's the basics of Finalgather.